All around the world we're telling stories. All around the world we're saying once upon a time.
Hi campers! My name is Dana and I am the Education Director for Sparkler Learning. Welcome back for another week of camp. This week we are traveling all the way to the eastern shores of Africa to a country called Ethiopia. Our friend Feven Wordofa, who works at the San Francisco Department of Early Childhood, is here to tell us a story from her culture. And the story is called The Businessman and the Donkey. Now this is a very special story because it's passed down and shared between person to person just by telling. Feven learned the story from her mom and now she's here to share it with us. I'm so excited for you to hear it. Let's go.
Hello, how are you? My name is Feven Wordofa, and I'm here to tell you a story that comes from a country called Ethiopia. It's located in the continent of Africa, right by the Horn. So today, I will be telling you a special story from a culture where it keeps stories in oral tradition. That means they were never written down in a book. So the story comes from one person to another, generation to another, told by telling, by speaking, not by writing it down. So where I'm from, similar to here, there are many languages spoken by the people in Ethiopia, but the one I speak is called Amharic. So in Amharic, before a story is told, we begin by saying Teret'eret. That means, are you ready to hear the story? And you will respond, Yelam Beret. That means you're ready to hear about the story. So here it goes. Once upon a time, a long, long, long time ago, people, before we have cars, used to use donkeys and horses to carry things and transport from one place to another. So there was this really nice businessman one time, and he didn't have a horse, but he had a donkey. He had one donkey that helped him with his work. So this businessman one day was going to a market with his donkey, and he sells salt. So he and his donkey had salt. He was carrying his luggage to his business, his documents and everything, and the donkey was carrying salt on her back. So they were walking, and it was a long journey, and it was a really warm day, and it was really hard for the donkey. So she kept really sighing because she was tired and she wanted to stop. So the businessman noticed the donkey and he hears her and she's making, do you know what a donkey sounds like? She's making the sounds where she's like, so he finds a really nice place with lots of grass and shades, and they stop by for a break. So he pulls out his lunch, he's eating his lunch, he's drinking his tea, and the donkey is there. She's resting. She's able to graze grass. There was lots of grass. And she is still feeling tired. She kind of doesn't want to do this anymore, but there's no option there in the middle of the road. So she's there, she eats a little bit of grass, and she goes, you. And the businessman is like, what is happening with my donkey today? She's behaving very oddly. So before it gets dark, he decided, let's just go and rest and sell our salt and just find a place to stay for the night. So they start back on the journey, and they're walking and walking, and they were walking by a river. And the donkey really wanted to just kind of splash and jump in the water. And she's walking and she stumbles up a little bit and water touches her and she noticed the salt is melting a little. And she's like, oh, I'm feeling a little lighter. Do you know what happens to a salt when it's in water? It melts. So the donkey kept walking with the businessman, and she has an idea to jump in, pretend like she's falling, and jump into the water. And she pretends like she's falling and completely submerges herself into the river, and she's all into the water, and she can feel the salt melting and the weight just going all away from her back. And she's feeling lighter and she's feeling lighter. And she was free from carrying the salt because it all melted in the river. And the businessman was so sad. So they had to return home without selling the salt. So that night he was really sad. He lost business. He couldn't make any money. So he was just up all night thinking, what can he do to make this better? So he had a brilliant idea. He wanted to change his business from selling salt to selling cotton. Cotton is much more lighter than salt. The donkey would not be complaining. So he decided to change his business to sell salt. So another business trip, he puts a large amount of cotton all the way up on the back of the donkey. But she really likes it because it's so light. So she's skipping, she's very happy. The businessman is really happy and can't wait to get to the market and sell the cotton. He's very happy and she's skipping and she's just enjoying the road. And they get to the same spot by the river. And she was like, yes, the cotton is light, but you know what's better if I don't have anything on my back? So she gets the same idea of doing the same thing she did on their last trip. So she walks, and before the businessman sees her, she pretends to be stumbling again, and she falls down into the river, all submerged. And the businessman was so shocked, like, what is happening? And then, do you know what happens to cotton when it's in water? It gets heavier. It doesn't dissolve. And now the cotton weighs almost 10 times heavier than how it was. And he couldn't even come out of the river. But the guy was like, I can't leave her in the river. So he kept pushing and pulling. And she kept crying. She was like, and they could get the cotton any lighter because it sucked up all the water and it was heavier. So it was such a hard trip. He had to keep pushing and pulling, and he did not return home. And he took her to the business, and they finally made it, and they put this cotton out in the sun. It dried, and he sold it. But she had such a bad trip, and she realized that always shortcuts is not always the good solution. So, the end. I hope you enjoyed that story. So, at the end, we always ask, what did you learn from the story? And we ask, what is the heart of the story? Because they believe each story has a little heart, but it would teach you things, new perspective, a new way of seeing things. So, think about it. Speak to someone around you what the heart of the story is and what you can learn from the businessman and the donkey. Okay, it was nice to be with you.
Thank you so much, Feven, for sharing that story with us, and thanks to you for listening. Now, it's your turn to get busy playing activities inspired by this week's story. I hope you have lots of fun this week, and I hope you'll come back again and join me next week to find out what else happens once upon a time.